Agreed.
Agreed, Mayor.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I'm sure this one will be just as straightforward. Headed item 10. The Part 8 for proposed works at Lucan Village Green and Main Street. This is for approval. Mick.
Great, thanks, Mayor. This is a separate Part 8 which ran through the same process and the same timescales, but a separate Part 8. So this is for the Lucan Village Green, which is the scheme that you can see on the bottom left. That's an artist's impression of what that would look like. And then on the right-hand side, you've got the proposed amendments or the proposed changes to the Lucan Village Main Street. Next slide, please. So this just helps to orientate people, so you can see where the Lucan Domain project and the promenade are, and then where the word Lucan is effectively where the Village Green and the Main Street are. So for those councillors who may not be as familiar with the area, that's the location of the three of those projects. Next slide. So on the left-hand side is the images of the Main Street today. So the one on the far left is standing on the Lucan Road looking back up, Centre's on your left hand side, looking back up that section of the Main Street towards say Kenny's pub. On the right hand side you're standing looking back down that direction, and then you can see the type of quality of the paving, etc., that exists at the moment. And on the right hand side, the artist's impression on the top one is a similar location to the image on the left. And the one on the bottom right is if you were kind of standing, hovering above Coffee Works, looking back towards the Village Green, and you can kind of see the Main Street works on the right hand side there. So that's what the artist's impressions of that looks like. Next slide, please. The Village Green works. So again, on the top you can see the existing situation, standing at the Lucan Road looking into the park, and the two on the right are looking down at the footpath along Dispensary Way, which is quite a narrow and unsafe environment at the moment. And then at the bottom of that you can see the artist's impression standing again at the Lucan Road looking back into the Village Green, and what that might look like. So next slide. So the diagrams here show on the top it's a cross section. So if you're at the very left hand side of the cross section at the top, you're at the, say, the Centra, and you move across the street and you can see the river, and then the amphitheatre and the improved open spaces. You then carry on out to Main Street, and on the right hand side is a plan of what that all looks like together. So on Main Street there are currently 40 car parking spaces on Main Street today. What's proposed is the reprovision of 16 spaces on that section of Main Street, with some significant public realm improvements, improved planting, improved seating and improved lighting, and a general public realm improvement. And then within the park itself there's a proposal to open up the southern side of the park, significantly improve biodiversity, and much more opportunities for people to be able to sit out and enjoy that space than currently happens at the moment. Next slide. Alongside that proposal, the Council is also proposing to introduce 14 additional car parking spaces within 135 metres of the existing Main Street. So you can see the 4 locations shown on the screen there. 4 just outside the AIB on the very left-hand side of the screen. There's 4 on the southern side of Lucan Road, 4 on the northern side of Lucan Road, but they're actually on Sarsfield Park Road, and then 2 outside of Carroll's on the Dispensary Lane. So that's the 14 in total. So that 14 coupled with the 16 on Main Street is a total of 30 spaces, which is a net 10 reduction from what's currently in that location at the moment. Next slide, please. So just akin to the first slide, so throughout the course of this we met with councillors 5 times as we were preparing and progressing through the design stages, keeping people informed of what we were doing. We then had 6 virtual consultation presentations with businesses and a number of stakeholders and community groups and residents, over 2 in May, 3 in October and 1 in November, where we I think in October, I think it's fair to say that we began to significantly understand the significant concerns from traders and residents around the potential loss of parking. And at that point, we had only included 16 spaces within the Main Street in total, and none in the wider area. And since then, we've gone away and done a huge amount of work to find additional spaces. As part of the first Part 8 planning application that we consulted on, we only included 10 spaces off street or within the wider area, and we've since then increased that to 14, with the introduction of spaces up on Sarsfields Park Road. So that's where we're now at 16 on the main street and 14 within the wider area. And in addition to that, in October, November and December, even myself and some of the team held meetings with a number of the trader representatives in the area. And we've had 2 leaflet drops, one issuing leaflets to 60 businesses during October to encourage people to attend those virtual consultations, and then 700 during the statutory process to local businesses and residents in the area. Next slide. So the consultation, akin with the first one, ran from the 20th of January to the 3rd of March. We at the same time held 2 public meetings where opportunities for residents or businesses to drop in and ask some more detailed questions. During that 6-week period, we got 7,317 responses. 461 of those were submitted through the SDCC consultation portal. 4,753 were received paper copy, but the vast majority of those paper copy submissions were pro formas. And then we received 2 submissions, one with 2,000 signatures and one with 107. The report, which is a long report, which was shared with councillors, goes through each of the significant issues that were raised as part of that process. Safe to say that the key issue raised was in relation to the proposed loss of parking on the main street, and concerns from businesses and residents that loss of parking would significantly impact on the businesses operating in those areas and the access to healthcare. So in response to that, what the council are saying is that, and I'll come on to another slide in a moment, but the proposed approach is, as I've said already, 16 parking spaces on Main Street, of which 11 will be pay and display, 3 disabled and 2 age-friendly spaces. And what we're saying about the age-friendly spaces is that that would be a pilot for the first time. The council currently don't do age-friendly car parking spaces. We would put 2 age-friendly spaces in there, given the concerns raised from the healthcare professionals in the area, saying that, you know, a large number of their patrons are people who access the GP practice there are elderly and you know would struggle to walk those extra distances. So for that, introducing the 2 age-friendly spaces, and if they're successful and used well and used in the right way, we would keep them. If they're not, we could remove them from being age-friendly and return them to be the standard car parking spaces. And then in addition to that, we've got the 14 spaces within 135 metres. The other changes to be made are the introduction of additional cycle stands, and then there's a number of detailed points about some design quality, etc., that we'll look at the next stage. Next slide. So a significant issue raised from the businesses is the loss of the submission say that the loss of car parking spaces would ultimately see a sizable reduction in the number of people who would access the village and who would therefore spend money in the village, and that would lead to business closures. And I think our response to that is look, we can understand local people's concerns about this, and you know the research that we've done and the research that our design team have done, but equally the research that has been gathering in this area for the last 15 years, and we've just included 6 reports. We've included links to 6 reports and a summary of 6 reports in our chief exec's report, which highlights there's a vast body of research done on this now over the last 15 years, which does demonstrate that public realm improvements leads to an increase in visitors, leads to increased spend because more people spend more time in these areas because they're a more positive environment. And in particular, I think the most relevant one for us is the recent village improvements carried out in Blackrock by Dunleary County Council, which was then independently assessed by TUD. And what they found is a year after implementation, 84% of residents think that the improvements are good. And this is a very comparable village to Lucan in the sense that it doesn't have, world-class public transport, and there was car parking, etc., moved, and a number of businesses were quite concerned about it in the outset. 72% think that scheme should now be made permanent. There's been a 40% reduction in car trips, 21% increase in the overall health, and a number of those other studies highlight across a range of these studies the benefits, the financial and economic and health benefits of this type of scheme. So our response to those, next slide please. Our response to the concerns raised is that whilst we can understand people fear about what might well happen, is that we do believe this is a positive outcome and will have a positive benefit on the area. Here's a number of examples of the same type of design approach for schemes that have been delivered across Waterford, Clonakilty, Bath, Blackrock, etc. So you can see examples of them there. So ultimately what we're here today, Mayor, is is we've gone through that process of a design where we believe we've got a good quality design, and ultimately at this stage it is kind of, in our view, very much a decision time for councillors as to whether or not the scheme as proposed, and I say this in the sense that we believe we've designed a scheme on the main street that can achieve the benefits comparable to these other schemes. Adding in more spaces into that would actually completely dilute the scheme and not deliver something that would be a benefit from a public realm perspective and wouldn't do what the traders of those concerns have raised. So very much in our view, it's time to either make a decision as to whether to progress the delivery of this or to not progress the delivery of it. There's no further kind of design iterations, etc., that we would be willing to stand over and support. So that's kind of where we're at, Mayor. So that takes us to the end of that presentation.
Thanks very much, Mick. I'm going to bring in the Chief Executive now, who wants to speak briefly.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Mick and his team and to thank the councillors locally. This has been a fairly expansive process involving a lot of discussion. I just want to point to the fact that this was surfaced initially in 2017 as part of our inaugural tourism strategy, that Lucan would be a destination we would look after and go after in terms of supporting a new tourism strategy, and we've been working diligently on that probably ever since. And when the opportunity for destination town status came up with Forge Ireland, we pursued that. This is not something new. This shouldn't have crept up on people, and that sort of jars with some of the narrative and, quite frankly, disinformation, alarming disinformation that has been propagated around this project. Centred on Lucan isn't open to tourism. Lucan doesn't want tourists. Lucan was fine, thank you very much. That wouldn't be my experience from prior discussion with the representatives of Lucan, the councillors, wouldn't be my prior experience from discussions with Lucan business people. So I find that somewhat surprising, that level of disinformation and that level of disquiet being expressed as if this is some sort of aberration. It's not. It's a plan which, taken together with the plan of the domain and the river and the prospect of us getting to purchase the schoolhouse, which we've gone sale agreed on, will involve a spend of circa €5 million on Lucan Village, including the signage and other bits and pieces are to come with this. That, taken with the plans for a 12 million cycle route to go through Lucan, sets it apart in terms of the level of investment and the level of diligence we are applying to Lucan as a centre for tourism on the Liffey, as the jewel in the crown of the Liffey as far as we are concerned. If we've misread that, and if it isn't the fact that people don't want this money to be spent, we should really come to determine that pretty quickly before we spend any more money, because this is a significant investment as part of a stated strategy that has a broader county-wide and regional context. So notwithstanding the net issue around the number of car parking spaces, the higher level discussion points and the disinformation around them do require clarification from a council corporate perspective and its investment strategy in tourism. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, I have requests to speak already, but just in the interest of saving the time of the meeting and making sure that you don't have to call on me to speak again, we have a number of amendments received. So what I'd like to do, if you're okay, is show you all of the amendments, outline the process, the procedure, the order in which we're going to take the amendments, and then we'll go to comments from the proposal of the amendments and then debate from the floor. So if we can bring up the amendments, please. Just on this, Councillor O'Connell, you've proposed two amendments. Under Standing Order 27, you can't speak twice, so you wouldn't be able to move two amendments. So if I could ask you, one of your amendments is fundamentally the same as Councillor O'Toole's. Would you be happy enough to withdraw that amendment and go ahead with the shorter of the two around the pedestrian bridge?
Yeah, I'd be quite happy, yeah.
Okay, Councillor O'Connell will remove what we have down as number 7. Because that's been submitted regardless, and we'll go back up to the top and we'll have a look at all of them. So the first amendment received is that headed item 10, part 8 for proposed works at Lucan Village Green and Main Street be amended by removing the proposals on parking and other works along the referenced part of Main Street, focusing solely on the Village Green works only. This one is fundamentally identical to motion 2 from Councillor Casserly. Initially, Councillor Gogarty, you indicated that Councillor O'Toole would second, but if she does that, she will not be able to move her own amendment on the matter. So can I ask if there's another seconder for this amendment?
Seconded, Gilligan.
It's seconded by Councillor Timmins, if we can make note of that, please. So this is the first amendment on the floor at the moment. If this one passes, any further amendments referring to the parking element, the Main Street works, will fall, as that will have been dealt with, but we will be able to consider some other amendments down the track. So what we are looking at now is the proposal, and the amendment has been duly proposed and seconded. So we'll start the debate on that. I'll ask, just give me 1 second. Happy enough, actually, to take Councillor Casserly's together with Councillor Gogarty, if you're happy enough with that?
I was just going to suggest that because I think the latter part of mine would be important in terms of the planning around the village. So if Councillor Gogarty is amenable to that, I think we should proceed with both of them together. Okay,
first of all, can I get a seconder for Councillor Casserly's motion? You can't. You won't be able to propose your own amendment.
A second.
Seconded by Councillor Lawler. It's seconded by Councillor Lawler. Councillor Gogarty, are you happy to take both amendments together?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what we will do. So what we'll do is I'll go to both proposers of the amendments to speak, then we'll take debate on the floor if you want. We will not move on to another amendment until we have cleared these ones, but let's just, for your information, scroll down through the rest of them so you know what's coming up. Amendment number, so we're taking 1 and 2 together, to amend the Chief Executive's report to include only the part relating to Main Street. Councillor Casserly's there contains the clause making provision for pedestrian crossings, which if they necessitate removal of parking spaces, that alternative spaces are put in the immediate vicinity. That's the fundamental difference, so that's what we would be agreeing if we go with that one. Amendment number 3 reads, to offset any loss of car parking spaces on Main Street, an additional 10 car parking spaces will now be introduced at the nearby location immediately west of the AIB car park entrance along the Leakslip Road, resulting in a zero net loss. In the name of Councillor Darren O'Brodick, again, I will come looking for a seconder for that one if we reach it, but that motion will fall if the first two pass. Motion number 4 states that this council resolves that as provided for, this is not an amendment, that's a motion, and as it's worded, that would be out of order. There needs to be an amendment to the proposal before us. Point of information from Councillor O'Brien.
Very quickly, sorry, I note that you said you're going to take these amendments, we're going to vote on the amendment which is before the floor now, and then move on to further amendments. Is the window for submitting amendments closed?
Nope, it's still open.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
Mayor, can you just explain?
No, wait, thanks. Point of information from Councillor Gilligan.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I know there's a lot of motions or amendments just to cut time. Sorry, Mayor, I don't just to cut time. Is there any point in going through, should we just tackle the Gogartys and Casserly's, and they may very well go through, in which case all of the other amendments, there's no point in discussing them or even going through them, because the first two might take them, it might save a bit of time, Mayor. Sorry, thanks.
Yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Gilligan, but no, the point is to let you know what other amendments will be there if you don't vote for the first one. So it's important that you have a full picture. A point of order from Councillor O'Connell.
Margaret, Mayor, I'm questioning your ruling in relation to Councillor O'Toole's motion, because the council has 6 weeks to consider the manager's recommendation, and to deny that leaves us open to a judicial review. That is the only other way that anybody can have the decision that is arrived at here today, or whenever it is arrived at. That's the only way you can really address or redress your democratic right. So I think, Mayor, that by ruling this out of order, I agree it is not an amendment, but it is a way of proceeding with dealing with the whole issue, not just with the amendments themselves. Mr. Margaret.
Yeah, Councillor Connell, I mean, you do say yourself you agree that it's not an amendment. The wording there says this council resolves. That's a resolution or a motion. It is not an amendment. If it were worded differently in some way that altered the text we were being considered, that included the substantive point of it, it would be in order. But the way it's presented to us, I have no choice. It is a resolution and not an amendment. Councillor Tuffy, point of order. Microphone, please. Over here, this one.
Well, first of all, I think it's important that people who were going to speak about the actual proposal itself would get in early, because we could have all these amendments, but really, you know, we have a particular proposal before us. So I just want to clarify, when you mean go to the floor, you mean to speak on the substantive thing as well. And secondly, I just want to make a point about the legislation. The legislation is basically, if nothing happens, if there's no vote at council within 6 weeks, then it proceeds as is. Anything that's done at a local area committee would be ultra vires, and you know people might think that they can do that.
You're debating the amendment now,
yeah.
but you know you're
Right.
absolutely correct. If no decision is taken by the council within 6 weeks,
Thanks.
the party proceeds. And on the point that you raised around speaking to the substantive proposal, absolutely, you just need to speak against the amendments while speaking to the substantive proposal. So can we go down to the last of the amendments before us today, please? Amendment 5, again, I'll come looking for a seconder if we get this far. The manager will conduct a review of the village scheme 6 months after its completion, including consultation with elected members, local business, health service providers and the wider community, in the name of Councillor Carey. Amendment 6, that in addition to opening up the visual access to the village green, pedestrian access be also enhanced by a provision of a pedestrian bridge between the main street and the village green, in the name of Councillor O'Connell. And then number 7 is that's been withdrawn because Councillor O'Connell couldn't have 2 in. So if we can go back up to the first 2 amendments, please. This is what we'll open the debate on. The way it'll work is everybody will have the opportunity to debate the amendments. Of course, if you want to support the substantive motion, you're simply arguing against the amendments. After the conclusion of debate, I'll bring in management to respond to the substance of the amendment and the amendment only. And then at that point we will move the first 2 amendments, and if necessary crack on with the rest of the amendments, eventually if necessary going back to the original substantive proposal. Okay, I hope everyone's clear enough on that. We have a couple of requests to speak in, but I'm going to go back to the proposers of the amendments first. So first up, Councillor Goberty, 2 minutes.
Gurv Margaret Tamara, and as said, I'm happy to accept taking Councillor Cassidy's motion as well with the additional sentence. Just first off to say, I'm instinctively in support of plans of this nature. They have been shown to work in other places. However, you cannot be bound by ideology either. You have to look at the specifics of every plan in detail. And I've gone through this, I've spent hours going through this. And I grew up in the area, so I have a lot of knowledge about it. There's 6,000 people between the village and Woodies. About 1,200 of these are over 65. Most of them are fairly healthy, but some aren't. Some have health conditions. There are parents of young children. The GP in the village is the busiest in Lucan, and there's a shortage of GPs. People have no choice but to get to this village. And the GP service is the one that swings it most for me in terms of the arguments been made. 24 spaces been taken away from a very sensitive area. There are people who could walk a little bit further, and you could possibly do with 10 less spaces in the village at a push at certain times, except for really peak congestion times. However, Mayor, the proposal at the location in question, I don't believe is going to work. It's not going to address the issues in the survey, which were to increase parking. It's not going to do anything to reduce through traffic. You're still going to have cars careering around the corner to try and get to Lucan Bridge and avoid the M50. It doesn't make sense. We need a bigger plan that addresses giving opportunities to change the modal shift in our village so as to increase cycling and walking. And we need a plan that restricts through traffic. And given the huge amount of people who've submitted in this, and I'm not I'm not defending any misinformation, because there was some misinformation, but looking specifically at this site, given the huge amount of people who've expressed their concerns, I believe we have to go back to the drawing board and look at the village plan as a whole and consult widely on a trial scheme, do the trial, and if it works, bring it to public consultation. I would have liked to support this plan, Mayor. Unfortunately, this isn't the plan that's going to sort out the problems in the village and change modal shifts. Gurr Mogget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gogarty. Councillor Casserly, please.
Thanks, Avera. Just to start off by saying, and to pick up on something the Chief Executive said, Lucan has never said it's not open to tourism. Lucan wants investment in Lucan, but we want it done in a way that will work for everyone present, from community to the Gardaí, to religious services down the village, to the GPs, health centres, banks, and especially our businesses. I'm from Lucan. I've lived in Lucan all my life. I do my shopping, and everything is invested in our village. There's no one that would like Paul, we're from the area and we really want to see our area enhanced. I'm asking you to listen. Over 7,000 submissions came in. Of that, only 1% were in favour of the removal of parking. I think that's very indicative of what our community wants. We'd like to see investment in our village green. We'd like to see that developed. We'd like that to be a centre point. And whilst the debate over 10 parking spaces doesn't seem quite like a huge number, it would severely impact the use of the village on a daily basis. You can drive down there any day of the week and within 10, 15 seconds there's spaces gone. You pull out, somebody pulls in. In terms of the consultation, just to get some facts right, and I have raised this with the director before, there was a public consultation, there was engagement with businesses. However, there was a leaflet drop. There was a number of local businesses, the credit union, Paddy's Barbershop, longest established businesses in Lucan, were omitted from this. And I have a paper trail of that because I am the one that sent them the link to join the business meetings. So it wasn't fully inclusive and engaging from the start. And I understand the director made efforts to go out, but I think, collectively, it's not completely fair to say that it was done right from the get-go. But I'd ask councillors to support the amendment. As Councillor Gogarty has said, we're from the area, we know the area, we live there, and we know what will work for it. We want to see investment in Lucan, we want to protect our businesses, and we want to hear what the residents, we want to adhere to what our residents would like to see in terms of development going forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Casserly. Councillor Johansson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And while I agree with some of the comments that have been made by previous councillors, for example, Councillor Gogarty and myself have agreed in a lot of discussions around Lucan Village and the need to look at Lucan Village from a holistic perspective in terms of traffic and improvements in the village. And for me, I think this is the first step towards doing that. And I do acknowledge there are concerns. However, having read all the 500 pages that were of the submissions that we had in the appendix, in appendix number 3 or 4, I think it was, it seems to me to be very clear that a lot of the submissions that were made that were objecting to this proposal were unfortunately made based on some misinformation that unfortunately went around, which I think is very disappointing. I think we do need to get people out of their cars. I think every time I go to Lucan Village, it strikes me as really sad that you have a really, really nice village with huge potential that is just full of cars. And it's really just a car park in Lucan Village and the main street in particular. And I think we have an opportunity here, and thankfully we had the Bus Connects implemented recently last year, which have brought new local buses like the L54, like the L51 into the area. That means that more people in other parts of Lucan can get to the village using public transport than have ever been able to access Lucan Village in that way before. I agree that we need more frequency on those routes and we need more local routes bus routes to get people to and from Lucan Village. However, I think this is a very good start, and that's why now is the right time to move on with these type of changes. I welcome the additional bike parking that has been committed to after the public consultation. I agree with some of the comments that have been made in the submissions around the through traffic, which the council does acknowledge. However, we're in a
Time, please, Councillor Hanson.
times we are not unfortunately able to deal with the issue of the M50 toll. I wish we could. I wish we could get rid of the M50 toll, because that would really help Lucan Village in terms of the traffic issues that you have there. However, I think, in my opinion, looking at this, this is to me the first step towards making Lucan Village more pedestrian friendly, more welcoming to both outside visitors, but more importantly for residents in Lucan to be able to enjoy the village in a way that anyone should be able to enjoy a village.
Thank you. Councillor Tuffy, please.
Mayor. The Lucan Patrick's Day Festival was held in the Lucan Village last month for the first time in 3 years, and it marked the first time that the late Peter Brady, former councillor, wasn't MC, and the retirement of 2 founding members, Barbara Cummins and Mary Meehan. And Lucan Village was at its best and most diverse and inclusive on that day. It was attended by people from all over Lucan, families, children, grandparents, people of diverse ethnicity. It reflected Lucan's wider diversity, and that day we couldn't obviously drive into the village, and we don't see that reflection of Lucan's diversity all year round. There's very little use of the village green. We don't see many children because it's not safe. We don't see cyclists because on the main street of the village green, because cars reverse blind out of spaces there, and it's just too hazardous for cyclists. It's not accessible. It's not accessible to wheelchair users or people with mobility issues. It's not inviting. There's in the report from the Lucan Business and Services Group, there's an estimate that 6,400 customers use Lucan Village each day. Now, it has a population of 21,000 down for Lucan. Now, that's the wrong population. Lucan has a population of about 60,000 people. In the Lucan electoral area alone, at the last census, there was 34,000 people, and that doesn't include the huge numbers of Lucan people that live in the Palmerstown and Fonthill ward. And Lucan is for everybody in Lucan. It's not just, people who live near the village and who can drive to the village. Many people in Lucan come to Lucan by bus, and many people walk. And this is about restoring public realm and community space. It's about restoring the green to a green rather than a closed-off park. It's about restoring the main street to a street and not just a car park that is accessible to all. This is a contentious issue, and that makes it difficult for local councillors. But as councillors, we have to look at the common good. We have to be inclusive of all, and we have to think about our other responsibilities to do with active travel and carbon emissions. And I'm going to vote for this, and I'm not going to vote for the amendments, and if it's passed, as a councillor, as a local councillor, I will work to make it work, and I'll work to reassure our community about its merits, and I will persuade and I will do my best to bring all people on board as it proceeds.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tuffy. Councillor Duff, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me in on this. Mayor, I can understand, having gone through, I suppose, ourselves here in Tala, the huge amount of submissions that were received about the Weir project there on Whitestown Way, or 88 social housing, where there was a huge amount of pro forma submissions came in. And while it's staggering when you read the amount of them, it's when you get down into the substance, it becomes a different thing altogether. This is a great opportunity, I suppose, no matter what's said or done, for the promotion of Lucan as a tourist destination. Lucan always was a go-to destination because a substantial number of people, including myself from the ranch down in Inchicore, would have relatives buried up in Esker, and they would go out and visit, and you'd wander down into the village, or maybe just down the end of the hill to the first pub as a child, and let's sit out on the step with your glass of lemonade. But here's an opportunity for those of us in the modern Lucan, when we go out to this village and see the amount of traffic and the amount of parking spaces that are in there. I probably would argue, you know, against pedestrianisation up to the point where it interferes with services. But pedestrianisation is a good thing, as proven, as we can see from in the city, where we have the likes of Grafton Street and Henry Street and a lot of our main areas, and other areas in the city crying out for pedestrianisation, particularly Parliament Street and Cable Street, now looking for it. And here's a good opportunity of Lucan leading the way for us in terms of our villages. Farnham operates a one-way system at the moment. I wish Tala would do the same, and if not, I wish Tala would follow the pedestrianisation route, because services can always be accessed. No matter what's said or done, people will be able to. I've said before, and I'll say it again, a resilient mayor, as well you know, and they find ways of doing things without having to be restricted or blocked or otherwise. Pedestrianisation, I think, will be good. It was over the case for this in terms of car parking was completely overstated, and I also believe this is the correct venue for the debate takes place here, either in the chamber, Mayor, or in the virtual chamber in front of the 40 councillors. And that this is what we do, but I will not be supporting the amendments, and I will be supporting the substantive motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff. Councillor Bailey next, please.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks everyone for allowing for this debate here today. Something I've been giving it quite a bit of thought. I'm not from Lucan and I don't represent the people of Lucan. I'm very conscious of that when I'm making this kind of contribution. Although my husband lived there for a number of years and would be the first to say that on most occasions he would have tried to avoid to use the village in any way, shape possible, just because of the fact that, as so many here today have described it, it's just a car park. I have to say, Lucan is probably one of the prettiest villages I've ever had the pleasure to kind of come through in the county. I haven't gone through it that many times, and the reason for it is that because we'd never dream of stopping, because how would you stop? Where would you park? It just seems, it feels busy and it feels stressful and it feels like this isn't somewhere where you'd want to come and spend time with your children and your family. And I think with the other works, potentially the main works that are going ahead and all that's looking to be done here, I suppose I can't help but wonder why, with the net loss of 10 parking spaces, and I appreciate that for any town or village that might seem difficult, but with the data out there so readily available, which shows that schemes like this really do improve footfall into our towns and villages, which is so badly needed, I'm just not clear as to why there just seems to be so much angst about it, which makes me want to think, like I'm thinking very long and hard about it. I think the examples that were given by Mick Clonakilty, I know a bit more than Blackrock actually, but both are really beautiful villages that have had them turned upside down by the schemes that have been brought in, and they're just completely different places. They feel different, they feel safe, they feel welcoming, they feel like somewhere where you want to spend time and probably want to spend your money. And now it shouldn't come down to just that, and I think wherever possible, I'm quite sure, and I'd like to hope that the council will do all that they can to try and make this a progressive and ongoing piece of work. Like, for example, the age-friendly spaces, for example. I think that's a really good inclusion as part of this as well. I've given it a lot of thought. I'm listening to what a lot of people are saying, though I have to say I'm inclined to vote in favour of the works as is. My last question, I suppose, to Mick is, if this doesn't go ahead today, whether it's voted against or whether it's paused, can Mick please outline what that actually means for the proposal? I know you mentioned earlier that would possibly be the end of it, but I just want to get a good sense of what you mean by that. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. Councillor Sinclair, please.
Good Vera. And thanks to Mick and the team. This is an excellent project, and it's a case study on what public consultation should look like. I'd also like to associate myself with comments from colleagues, in particular misinformation on buses from Councillor Johansson, pedestrianisation from Councillor Duff, walkability from Councillor Tuffy, and the prettiness of Lucan Village from Councillor Bailey. Look, I know I can be competitive on this subject with parking and cars and all that, but like
that combativeness or crankiness or whatever you want to call it, it comes from frustration. It's a frustration that we're all acknowledging that we're heading for climate catastrophe, but not acting like we're heading for climate catastrophe. It's a frustration that numerous studies and research pieces have shown the same thing again and again. Some of these are included in the Chief Executive's report, 39 of them, one for every elected member of this council as it stands. And these are challenged using anecdotal evidence and the opinions of individuals. Like, everyone is entitled to an opinion, but an opinion that doesn't have any facts backing it up. Like, in my opinion, yellow is red. See how that sounds? The facts are, to avert the worst outcome for our climate, we need to reduce our consumption. Moving away from our over-reliance on cars is an important part of this. And we can't make our urban centres better, more livable, more accessible, without prioritising people over cars. It's been shown time and again that businesses in these centres do better when accessible by active and public transport. Cars don't bring money. They bring pollution, they bring congestion, and they bring bad-tempered drivers who just want to get in, buy stuff and get out again. Don't hang around, don't buy anything extra. Let's move away from this abusive relationships we have with our cars. I'm not going to be competitive today, that's not the plan anyway, but this really does matter and it's worth fighting for. Lucan is a great place. It has the potential to be so much better. Let's get that done. Let's make Lucan more accessible, more livable. I'm in favour of the proposal as it was put to us.
Councillor O'Brodick, Moshe.
Just two very quick concerns that I have, and I would ask the manager to come in, is to offer clarification on the loading bays and the parking arrangement there, and also to offer some commentary around how this might affect the integrity and maybe jeopardise the funding of the project. I want to importantly acknowledge the very active engagement that's taken place by members of the public and obviously businesses in the village. The crux, as we now know, the fly in the ointment, very obviously is about the removal of car parking spaces, and the majority of the submissions are exclusively concerned around this, and that's acknowledged by all parties, I think. The net reduction, as I'm satisfied, is 10 parking spaces from 225 to 215, which is about 4%, and that's not to downplay the importance of those spaces. On the flip side, we have an opportunity, I believe, to deliver a potentially fantastic, improved public realm that promises to reclaim the village centre and, in fact, possibly increase footfall and business profits over time, whilst at the same time, giving us an opportunity to play a part in meeting our own responsibilities on areas that have been previously mentioned around active travel, improving public transport, even aiding, village level biodiversity and so on. I've read a lot of the submissions, like others have spent hours on this, and, including some of the submissions from local businesses. And I recognise that there really are very legitimate concerns that have come from consultants that are in a much better place than I am to judge these matters, but I've equally studied the reports and noted the Chief Executive's responses. And to be honest, I'm struggling with the case being made on the kind of economic assertions from some of the submissions that the party will result in a kind of monetary or job losses. So I don't think we can simply equate the removal of each car parking space to a monetary figure in that way.
Time, please.
But that also said, I don't believe Lucan necessarily compares to a lot of the case studies that we've been provided with by the council on similar projects. Regarding the vehicular access to the medical care facilities on the main street, I fully appreciate the concerns that have been raised here.
Time, please.
And I mean, the three disabled spaces were always a must, so I welcome the two new age-friendly spaces that have been added. There was a bit of misinformation being circulated throughout the consultation period, but that's
Time,
really
please, Councillor.
neither here nor there now. So I feel that a further compromise alteration to the design now needs to happen, and at the very least the lost spaces must be found elsewhere, and for that reason that's why I'm offering an amendment down the line.
That's enough.
I would ask that other councillors and colleagues.
Councillor, you're out of time.
Sorry, Mayor.
You're out of time a minute ago. Thank you. Councillor O'Brien, please.
Mayor, thank you very much. Look, as the debate has gotten underway, people will appreciate that this issue has become somewhat contentious. I won't, I suppose, go back over some of the points that have been made. I would like to have more actively engaged in this process, particularly over the last number of months. But unfortunately, I have had some mental health issues which have proved debilitating, and so I wasn't as engaged as I should have been. And I only say that in this forum to so as my lack of engagement mightn't be taken as somewhat stepping back from the plan, because this is a plan which I have been very, very supportive of. Before I became mayor, I spoke with the chief executive, who in turn spoke with Mick and his team about a vision that I had for Lucan, one which had been expressed by councillors long before me. And I think it's important to stress, you know, some of the things that have been said already in the debate, that this is not a cure-all for Lucan Village. This is not something which was ever intended to deal with the traffic issues in the village. It's not something that was going to cure all of the ills. This is the first stage of a tourism plan which we have developed for Lucan. And I suppose I'm faced here with on the one hand, my own positive outlook. I can see the real tangible benefits which might flow from a scheme like this. But I do understand, because I have engaged with some of the traders who I've known for upwards of 30 years, having worked in Lucan Village since I was in my early 20s. I fully understand their concerns about the plans. Whilst I mightn't necessarily agree with the points that they make, I think, although it has been explained to me the circumstances under which it was put about that this would result in the loss of 60 car parking spaces, unfortunately you can't help but feel that may have coloured some of the submissions which might have been made by people. I think we need to look beyond that. I can't hand on heart say what impact this is going to have, whether it will have an impact on business. But I do believe that it will have a very positive impact. And if you just permit me, Mayor, I would like to ask the movers of these proposals whether, if these amendments are defeated, they intend to vote for the Part 8.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor O'Toole, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Manjun, for the presentation. And as expected, there's been a debate on it. And you did state at the start.
Sorry, Councillor O'Toole, just hold on a second. Could everybody please mute if you're tuning in remotely?
Can I just come in for a minute? I've had my name down twice to speak on each time you're...
Councillor Cairns, I have you on the list. I have you up next.
But
I will call on you.
I was in the chat ahead of Councillor Duff as well.
Sorry about that. That's entirely my fault if I missed that, and I did miss it because you came in before the points of information. My apologies, Councillor Cairns. I'll go to you immediately next after Councillor O'Toole is finished. That's entirely my fault. I missed you because you came in before the points of information.
No problem.
I apologise. Councillor O'Toole, please resume.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd be happy to go to Councillor Cairns if it was easier.
Happy enough?
Yeah.
Councillor Cairns, would you like to come in now?
Honestly, I don't mind. If Leon would like to go ahead, that's fine, no problem.
Okay, so Councillor O'Toole is going to go ahead, and then we'll go to you, Councillor Cairns. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Mayor. And you did state at the beginning that we don't have time, and we're in our required time, we're in the standing orders, and I would love the time to ask many questions on this, but I want to thank my fellow councillors for listening to me over the last couple of weeks in relation to this. We're in the Chief Executive's report in front of us. You did add in the tourism survey, and rightfully so. But this survey, which also has significant responses from the survey, and traffic being the main concern, once again, in the Lucan Tourism report, and many suggestions are in that report to say sort out the traffic, the lack of car parking, etc., before any major changes are applied. And you should read that survey, it's very interesting. The Part 8 in front of us is making major changes to the traffic part of it. It is an add-on from the original 2015 Village Green upgrade. For anyone that was involved in it back then will know that there was never any talk about outside the perimeter of the green. So what we're asking here from our fellow councillors is to carry out the Village Green improvements as initiated in 2015 and set aside the parking road modification till a later stage. So the efforts that have been made by everyone here today, not just councillors, not just the public, but management as well, that we'll be able to capture that in the future study, which is planned a little bit down the line. Throughout the process, I did see photos from the architects, and I did say they look fabulous and well done. But I said, put it out to the people and see what they said. 7,000 plus submissions. Your own leaflet that was given out said, give us your submissions and observations, we welcome them. But they don't appear very welcome today, given that the majority of submissions that were raised around traffic and car parking concerns are not offering any changes in the Chief Executive report. A lot of questions and discussions and detailed discussion is needed around this plan. We did have presentations, we did have phone calls from management, but not the opportunity as local councils to sit down at local level and to question this report in details, because it does have questions that need to be trashed out, and it's a very comprehensive report and requires that time. I fully agree with the Chief Executive on bringing wonderful things to Lucan. So many people do, and nobody's against that, but all we're asking is to allow us the time to make the amendments on the car parking aspect at a later stage. It's not just businesses, people, the campaign looked, it was health people, it was churches, it was residents,
Time, please, Councillor.
vulnerable people, older people, and there's the question on economic study. Yes, the management's pulled from other studies, but we haven't done our own economic study on Lucan Village as well. If you don't support this amendment, I will ask my councillors to please consider the one that's future down the list as well, to bring it back to our area committee. We have a responsibility to do it's customary practice. We have steps to take. Please allow us to take that step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you.
Now, with apologies, I'm really sorry for missing it. Councillor Kearns.
No problem at all, Mayor. I just actually thought I had a problem, with the chat list, so that's the only reason. First off, I'd like to congratulate my colleague, Councillor O'Brien, because I think to even try and operate your job, if you're under any kind of pressure, with kind of mental health issues, it's a testament to his commitment to his community that he's even engaging here today, and hats off to you, Ed. I admire you for that. I just want to put my own tuppence halfpenny worth in here, because, as you know, there's a lot happening at the moment in my own kind of local village of Temple Oak, and it's much smaller. It has only passing traffic really who go into the traders there, and in the upgrade that's currently happening, it's lost 10 parking spaces. Now, initially the traders were distraught at that, at the idea, but the long-term plan, parking is nearby. They have to walk a little bit, but it's about 5-minute walk maybe. And the improvements in the village are unbelievable. It looks great. There's a lot more greenery around. The coffee shop is flying at the moment, because everybody's walking to the coffee shop and hanging around longer. So I would just say and I got lots of emails, and, I haven't answered them all, and I apologise, but I will actually get around to answering them all. It's a positive plan. I mean, it's taken away some parking spaces, but that's what we're supposed to be doing because of our climate, change commitments, and for a whole host of other reasons. So I will support my colleague, Councillor Joanna Tuffy, in everything Joanna's after saying. And I would just ask, I presume there's a lot of, residents listening in at the moment. Be open to it. It's actually a good thing. It's a lot of money to spend on it's a beautiful place, but you can't get into it. So, that's pretty much it, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kearns. Councillor O'Connell, please.
Good morning, and look, a lot has been said, and it's about 12-14 years ago that I and other councillors had a site meeting there with the local disability group. And from the old cinema right down to the bank of the AIB bank, somebody in a wheelchair and somebody else who was visibly impaired had showed us the awful problems they have. So I fully agree we need to do something in relation to making it more pedestrian friendly. At the same time, going back even then with the village design and ever since. The one thing that is wrong with Lucan is it's clogged with traffic. Not people going to go into the 321 parking spaces, but 70% of the traffic coming into Lucan is going out the other side. Has nothing in the world to do, it goes over the bridge. And I want people to know that. So if you're voting today to ensure that we're going to do anything about traffic, anything about pollution, forget it. That ain't what is on the agenda. Yes, I agree with the manager or the chief executive, the narrative has been there, but the narrative has been lost. When you say, for example, that Main Street at the moment is a car park, it's not. It's a thoroughfare, and some people can find parking there. And so we should have been dealing with that first. If there is a bigger plan, show us the bigger plan. Show us that this is part of what is going to fit into everything else. I agree with the Lucan Planning Council, for example, when they propose that we change the way traffic travels, and the only reason you will go into Main Street is if you wanted to park there. And I'll say no more about that, it's there. At the moment, Lucan is a flourishing village. We now want to open it up for tourism. And we all want to do that. And what we've done with the Weir or talking about doing will help that. But I can assure you that if we kill the village in the process, then you will no longer have your lovely flourishing village. So I was asked the question, if these two motions are not passed, will I vote for the plan? The answer is no. It's a bad plan.
Time, please.
It doesn't deal with the real issues, and the real issues are traffic going through the village, and the real issue is that we need to have a safer place, but this won't make it anything safer.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connell. Councillor Edge, please.
Thanks, Mayor. My apologies, my camera has been off. I'm just in an area particularly bad Wi-Fi today, but I have been listening attentively. Look, this is an extremely difficult issue. On the one hand, I take on board everything that has been said, and I'm particularly struck by the fact that there are 7,000 responses. I think that's not something that can be ignored lightly. Councillor O'Toole made a number of requests for this to go to ACM first, and I have to say I have a lot of sympathy with it, if only for the fact that those councillors who know the area and know the issues concerned could be debating this prior to it coming to full council. I think in a situation like this, we have to take on board what Lucan councillors are saying, but I'm particularly struck by what a number of councillors said, particularly Councillor Ed O'Brien, and the context in which it was said. So I thank him for his contribution. I think what's determinative for me will be the response to a question asked by Councillor Bailey, which is whether or not this will go ahead if these amendments pass, and what the effect on the overall scheme will be.
Thank you, Councillor Edge. Councillor Carey, please.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I've been impressed by a lot of the comments and a lot of the arguments that have been put forward. However, I think what this essentially boils down to is, what do we want to see for Lucan, and what is Lucan, what is proposed for Lucan as a village. I'm not going to argue against any of the points that have been made here. Just to tell my own story regarding Lucan, and my own story is that I grew up in Ballyfermot, and the Liffey was a huge part of my childhood growing up. And we would cycle, we would go down, we say, to Island Bridge, we would swim in there, but we would also head up towards Chapel Lizard, up over Knockmaroon Hill, down Strawberry Beds, all the way up into Lucan. And that's something you won't see happening these days. And the reason that you won't see it happen is because the roads are too dangerous. Lucan Village, you go into Lucan Village, people have said here they're only passing through. And quite honestly, I mean, there is no other reason to be going into Lucan Village, because you can't stop. There is no acceptance in Lucan Village at the moment. You need to create a village that is going to accept people in the village, not just traffic. And that is one of the issues that we need to address here. This may not be a perfect plan. This may not be a perfect plan that's been set out, but it is the plan we have before us. And I believe it will improve overall the life of for the people who do
go into Lucan Village to carry out their business and to carry out their lives. So I will be supporting the motion or the proposal as it is, and I won't be supporting these amendments because I believe these amendments are detrimental to the overall plan that's been sought before. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Carey. Deputy Mayor Donaghy, please.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks very much to councillors for what I think has been a very constructive debate, albeit with lots of very sincerely held views from opposing positions. But I think what's come through here is, and I think something that everybody can agree on, is that everybody sees a need for more walkable, more livable villages. And even if we totally set aside the huge issue of the climate crisis and the need for modal shift, all of our historic villages are facing this issue where, between increases in population and increasing reliance on cars, we've completely divided our villages and made them places where people don't feel welcome, where it's difficult for people with mobility issues to move around on pavements, to get prams around, things like that. And as we destroyed our own villages with roads, we then went and recreated them with things like out-of-town shopping centres. Like Dundurn Town Centre is basically what a walkable village is supposed to be. You've got everything within reach and cars are tucked off to one side. I think as well over the last couple of years we've seen an increasing appetite to reclaim that space and turn our villages into real, and our public realm into real shared spaces. And I think the aim of this is to try and do that. Even if we hadn't had that catalyst coming, I mean, there have to be decisions made really about who is able to access our village centres with cars. And I think the choice is obvious. It needs to be people who absolutely have to drive in, whether it's because of mobility issues, because we're creating the age-friendly spaces, and I think it needs to be there for people who are accessing health services. But for everybody else who's going in to do some small shopping or have a coffee or things like that, I think we need to be creating incentives for people to think twice about why they're going in by car, and can they park a little bit further away if they do need to go in by car? Can they walk or cycle in? Can they take public transport? Our public transport options are improving. They're not where any of us want them to be, but they are improving. Our walking and cycling infrastructure is improving, and we've seen with the public realm works that we've just approved in the last few minutes, with other projects that are ongoing around the greenways, with the link road. There's so much that's happening to try and make everything much more accessible to people outside of cars. And I think this is an obvious step towards the type of village centres that we're trying to create. There's nothing that says we can't have another look, and if things aren't working, that we can't try to adjust them. But I'll be voting in favour of the substantive motion. While I thank the councillors for the amendments that they've brought in, unfortunately I can't support them. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Point of order from Councillor O'Toole.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. No, just and I do appreciate everyone's contribution, everybody, regardless of whether it was in favour of what we're looking for to do or not. But it was said that I made reference to my attempts to bring it to area committee, and why didn't local councillors in the area meet to discuss this in detail. This report was given to us on Tuesday, which was less than a week ago. So to expect us to do such in such a short time frame.
I don't think that's a point of order. That's normally how the council agenda is set. We'll have to just move on.
Thank
Point
you.
taken. Thank you. Councillor Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to say it's great to be back in the chamber. Democracy is great. 5 Lucan councillors, 3 against the proposals, 2 for it, so it's great. It's great to look at my colleague Kieran McMahon looking straight across, and Louise Dunn looking straight at me as well, so it's fantastic. Just want to make a brief comment. It's great to be back, I must say, and to all my colleagues who are in the chamber. Just want to commend the comment that Councillor O'Brien mentioned earlier on. I worked with Ed when he was group leader, and he was 100% first class, so sorry to hear that bit of news, but well done, Ed, and thanks for bringing it to our attention. Appreciate it. Just want to have a question, won't delay. If there's any significant changes, are the management going to proceed with this project? You did say in the headed item number 9, Mick, that if there was, you didn't envisage that there was going to be changes, but do these changes significantly impact this project going ahead, which will be determined what way I will vote? The number of the amendments are, there are big changes to this, so I just want to know what's the position. We're talking about amendments there, but at the end of the day, the chief executive said that he might pull away. So where is the line of significant changes to this project? And would he be just clear in this on all the amendments as they go down? Is there significant changes for the members? That's all I want to say. Thank you, Mayor, so much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mahan.
I just have a quick point to make, Chair, and thanks to people for the contributions. It just appears to me, looking at, well, sorry, where this comes from is, like we had a bit of a back and forth at the Tala Area Committee recently about if you were to redesign Tala Village, how would you do it? And like, none of us are enamoured with the way Tala Village is at the moment, you know. But one of the points is, it's not, one of the points I think about Tala Village as it is at the moment, it's not the attempt to deal with parking to accommodate it or not to accommodate it. It's the lack of a public space that's been created. And it seems to me that what's in this plan actually creates a public space where businesses may initially have an issue, some residents may have an issue around mobility, etc., which we should be very conscious of in terms of the parking that is provided. But it seems to me the vast majority of people in Lucan would benefit from having an additional, more accessible and improved public realm. One of the problems with Tala is that it's so cut off and there is no actual open space where people can gather, where people can sit and where the community can hang out, for want of a better word, do nothing or do whatever the hell they want to do in the middle of their town. And it seems to me that this plan does provide that. I think there's a lot of positives in that. But I do have a question, and it's a genuine question, as to why it didn't go to the area committee. It would seem to me that on plans like this, it would be practice for it to go to an area committee. Now, I do take the point and agree that ultimately the full council has the responsibility to decide on these issues, but it would seem par for the course that these things would go to an area committee. There would be discussion, there would be some local feedback, and what comes to the full council then would be much further along the line than this proposal seems to be in terms of agreement or lack of, and things would have been taken into account by this stage before it comes to the full council. So that's just a point, and I'd appreciate an answer on that. But I'm generally supportive of this proposal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mahon. If we have no other contributors, I'll make my own points around this issue, and then we'll go to management and then the Chief Executive for responses to the questions raised. It's obviously a very emotive topic, and it's something that has caused an awful lot of debate. In fact, I was phoned for a comment this morning by 98 FM, and I tried to keep myself on an even keel, just try and play it with a straight bat and be as neutral as I possibly could, until the phrase that has been bandied about for a number of weeks was thrown at me, and that was pedestrian wasteland. Are you not worried that Lucan Village will turn into a pedestrian wasteland if this goes ahead? I've never seen a pedestrian wasteland. And to be honest with you, I think as much as business owners opposed it at the time, Blackrock is doing okay at the moment. Grafton Street's doing all right. Henry Street and Mary Street are getting by. The wheels of capitalism will keep turning, regardless of what we do. And in fact, when it comes to pedestrianisation, if anything, I don't think this scheme goes far enough in the way of pedestrianisation. When I saw it, I was jealous. I'd love this for Clondalkin Village. I really genuinely would. And I've listened intently to the contributions of colleagues, and I understand the motivation behind them. I absolutely don't doubt that you're all stand-up individuals acting in the best interests of your community. But given all the misinformation that's been out there, I've had emails asking how Lucan is going to survive with 200 and 300 car parking spaces being taken off it. So there is a lot of confusion out there. Realistically, the question for me on a personal level is, do I think that 10 parking spaces is a price I'm willing to pay for a safer, better Lucan Village? And I do. We'll go to management for response, then I'll come back to the proposers to sum up before we take a vote on the amendments.
Mayor, before Mick comes in, could I just clarify something?
Sorry, do you want to come in now, Danny, on your point?
Would you mind? Sorry, Mayor. I know Mick will get to the heart of most of the questions. But just to go back to the point that I made, because I think Councillor Lawler referred to it, it's not a question of management pulling away from this. The point I was making was more fundamental than that. This is in pursuit of a higher level strategy that was agreed by the council. Okay, we're now down to the minutiae of it. But just to be very, very clear, that higher level strategy was part of a broader tourism strategy, which now is not starting to look like, looks very much like this council is favourably disposed to spending about €5 million in Lucan. My point is very, very simply that that position adopted by council, to my knowledge, was very much at variance with the local narrative from certain quarters that said What's this all about? This is an aberration. This is an indulgence. This shouldn't be happening. So I wanted to be clear from the point of view of the executive that we are pursuing council policy, and we will continue to do so after today's meeting, depending on the councillor's decision, but it is not an aberration, and it is part of a higher level strategy, regardless of intimations during the course of the present debate that it mightn't be. It is. And, you know, so, look, we believe, given the level of research, given the prior conversations, given the breadth of the strategy, given the content of the strategy, that this is the best scheme. Now, members may well choose to go with a narrower perspective or a different perspective on this, based on local knowledge and based on their role as democratically elected representatives. If that's the case, that's what we'll do. We'll take it forward, minus a piece, plus a piece, whatever it is. That's your role, and we will respect that. But it's the bigger thing of understanding that we're not on the wrong road in the pursuit of an objective that involves spending 3, 4, 5 million. If people don't want it, we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't do it. We should spend it somewhere else. That was my point.
Okay, we'll take that point as made. Mick, back to you to answer a few of the questions that were raised.
Thanks, Mayor. So, just to pick up a couple of the comments, in terms of the initial leaflets that were issued in October 2021 to those 60 businesses, they were issued to those 60 businesses. You know, leaflets sometimes might go missing in the, you know, when they're dropped in a door or whatever. And I was just double checking there. We did have correspondence with Alan Monaghan on the 18th and 19th of October last year in advance of the final, and you know, sent him on the link at that point. So we did engage directly with Paddy Barbers at that point. And I think it's probably fair to say that nobody doesn't know about the scheme. With, you know, over 7,000 responses, I think, you know, everybody knew what was happening. I think with regards, multiple councillors asking questions about the scheme amendment, I think, look, it is the intent, like if this amendment, the first amendment does go forward from Councillor Gogarty and Casserly, it would be our intention to still crack on and deliver the Village Green. I think the Village Green element is a really excellent part of the scheme, and I think with the pedestrian connections, it's a real positive to it. I think the Main Street would really add to that, but as the Village Green as a standalone piece, if you look at it, I think it's a really well designed and would deliver significant benefits. For Councillor Brodig, in terms of the loading bay, the current loading arrangements, there's signs up in place at the moment today on the Main Street which indicate where loading should take place prior to 11 a.m. and effectively that arrangement would still continue. I know some people have raised concerns about those parking spaces wouldn't be available in advance of 11 a.m. That's not the case. Effectively, loading arrangements would continue as they do today on the Main Street, whereby we're encouraging that loading to take place before 11 a.m. in a particular area, which happens as it does today. In terms of the questions around ACMs, I mean, ultimately, why this didn't go back to an ACM, I mean, this scheme has been in discussion with councillors since April last year, so 12 months. We're down to one issue, really, which is the level of parking on the Main Street. It's quite a binary choice at this point. It's either do the scheme as designed, because we're quite clear with our design team that you can't get more parking on there, you'll dilute it. So we found those additional car parking spaces in the surrounding area to address the concerns that have come up. So it's either do this scheme and think that it would be the right thing, or don't do that element of it. So, I mean, we've had multiple conversations. It's not like there's a further round of bringing it back to the ACM, hashing it out, negotiating, trying to find that more spaces. It is what it is now. It's decision time, and that's a decision for the full council, really to make. Just one or two other points just to pick up on in general. So, as per the report, like, we've picked a number of locations, like, you know, we've identified a number of locations like Blackrock, like Waterford, like Clonakilty, which, you know, are directly comparable in many ways to Lucan, and those public realm schemes have delivered sizable benefits. And yes, we have highlighted other locations which do have, you know, excellent public transport schemes to give that full picture. Look, we would love to be able to remove the traffic, you know, the through traffic that has, you know, just comes over the Liffey Bridge and brings no benefit to Lucan, it just cuts through onto the M4. We'd love to be able to do that. There isn't a magic solution to that. We have been discussing longer term trials about what may or may not be possible as part of that, and, you know, that's something that we would still look to do in the future. But ultimately, for us, I think what it comes down to is remove, even if we're able to reduce or remove or amend the way that traffic moves through the area, this issue of the loss of parking is not going to go away. That through traffic doesn't solve the parking issue. And ultimately, even if we do that and we come back to this at the future, it will effectively mean that all future public realm improvement schemes in Lucan will be dependent on don't touch the parking. And I think if we're in that space of trying to deliver improved public realm, improved spaces for people, and we have to keep the level of parking that's there at the moment, you're ultimately not able to do it. So there isn't the space in the village to create great pieces of public realm, aside from the village green, create those great spaces and keep everything else exactly as it is today. There just isn't the space within this. So I don't think, even if we go away and amend this now, I don't think this issue of we'll solve the traffic and then ergo that'll solve the parking requirement. That will always be there. So I think ultimately, if the direction here today is don't touch car parking, I think we'll take that away, and that will have to dictate really what happens in the future of Lucan Village. And I think it will significantly undermine our ability to be able to deliver great public spaces in Lucan Village. So I think that probably sums up all that I wanted to add.
Okay. We'll now go to the proposers of the amendments to sum up for 1 minute each. Then we'll take a vote on amendments 1 and 2 together, and then, if necessary, move on to further amendments. So, first of all, with 1 minute, Councillor Goberty. Councillor Goberty?
Just lost connection.
He's just lost connection.
He's coming back in.
Councillor Cassidy, would you like to go first?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Manager, for taking the time to answer all those questions. It is much appreciated. Just to surmise, public consultation, the whole process, allows businesses, stakeholders and residents to engage with their local authority. I think what's clear is, as I said, 7,400 submissions. Of that, only 1% are in favour. I'd ask other councillors to listen to the local councillors. Listen to us that live there. We know the area, we know the ins and outs of how our village goes. Trust in our knowledge and understanding of this. To make reference to the age-friendly parking, which would obviously be most welcome. This isn't a new thing. We're an age-friendly county. I have motioned this previously at Lucan Area Committee to take place in Lucan Village outside of this Part 8. So that is on the way. In terms of accessible bays, in addition to them, I personally lobbied for years for an addition of accessible parking bays. So I would ask that's remembered to the forefront. I'll finish by saying Lucan supports investment. Lucan wants investment, and I'd seek management to secure revenue in future budgets for the upgrade, repair and maintenance of the footpaths. We'd love to see enhancement of our village green. And again, I would just ask councillors to please support our local knowledge of our village and residents that made submissions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Gogarty, you're back with us. Is it working now?
Mayor, he's still trying to get connection.
I saw him just a minute ago, he said back in. Councillor Gogarty, I just want to make sure you're here to vote as well, so I'll give you a second.
Yeah, I'm back in now. For some reason, the entire internet went, but I'm back in there.
Okay, listen, you have a minute to sum up. Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Fact one, this plan will not reduce car use. When I grew up in Lucan, we had 10 convenience stores. There's only one convenience store left, which is Lynch's in Lucan Village. And out of the 6,000 people I referenced between Lucan Village and Woody's, 3,000 of them live more than a kilometre away. So with respect, they have to drive. And some of them, if they can't get a parking space within 500 metres to carry 2 litres of milk, a tin of beans, a banana, a sliced pan, they're just going to keep on driving further and park elsewhere. The key point is the GP surgery. Why would Dr. Lombard and colleagues oppose this plan so vehemently? They're oversubscribed. It's not in their interests to tout for more business. They're purely concerned about the people who attend their services. And I put it to you with this plan, Mayor, that what this is actually doing is giving an insult to people who have heart conditions, to people who have disabilities, to people with young children who are sick. It's not taking into consideration them. Councillor Tuffy mentioned St. Patrick's Day Festival and Lucan Festival. 2 days, great, when the place is closed off. But the rest of the time, Lucan is not a circus. Lucan is a living, breathing village. People have medical needs. Lucan is not a circus, And the 7,000 people that put in submissions on this, Mayor, are not clowns. Please respect what they've said. Ignore the misinformation, but they made very salient points about this particular stretch, this sensitive stretch beside a GP surgery. And I ask members to please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gogarty. Here's me, I was telling them time when my mic wasn't on. We're going to go to a roll call vote on amendments 1 and 2. Cameras on if you're attending remotely. Cameras on, roll call vote.
Councillor Bailey?
Just left.
Against. Councillor Kerry?
Against.
Councillor Carsely?
In favour.
Councillor Collins?
For.
Councillor Costello?
In favour.
Councillor Donaghy?
Against.
Councillor Duff?
Against.
Councillor Dunn?
Against.
Councillor Edge? Councillor Edge?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Egan?
For.
Councillor Gilligan?
Just to ask, this is the Gogarty's and Castley amendment?
Yep.
4. Thank you.
Councillor Gogarty?
If over 4.
Councillor Hayes?
For.
Councillor Holohan? Councillor Hanson?
Against.
Councillor Kavanagh?
Gwynne.
Councillor Kearns?
Against.
Councillor King, sends apologies. Councillor Lawler?
In favour.
Councillor Mahon? Councillor McCrave? In favour. Councillor McMahon?
In favour.
Councillor McManus?
In favour.
Councillor Moynihan?
In favour.
Councillor Murphy?
In favour.
Councillor O'Brady?
Against.
Repeat, please.
Against.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Brien? Councillor O'Brien?
Councillor O'Brien? I think you got cut off.
Councillor O'Brien? Okay. Councillor O'Connell?
In favour.
Councillor O'Connor?
Against.
Councillor O'Donovan?
For.
Councillor O'Hara?
In favour.
Councillor O'Toole?
In favour.
Councillor Perry Padden?
In favour.
Councillor Richardson? Councillor Sinclair?
Gwynne.
Councillor Timmins?
For.
Councillor Tuffy?
Against.
Councillor Whelan?
Gwynne.
Thank you.
Did we lose Councillor O'Brien during that call? Just give it a second before we... Oh, okay, we'll have to go ahead and count the votes. On the amendments to the Part 8, that headed item 10, Part 8 for proposed works at Lucan Village Green be amended by removing the proposals on parking and other works along the referenced part of Main Street, focusing solely on the Village Green works only and making provision for pedestrian crossings, which if they necessitate removal of parking spaces, that alternative spaces are put in place in the immediate vicinity. Evolver, Fihe, Iguina, Cuig or Deg. In favour 20, against 15. Amendments are carried. Given that those amendments have carried, I'm going to take a few minutes to see which amendments will fall and which will stand. So we're going to take a 20-minute dinner break now at this point and resume at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Just a query, Mayor. Just a point of information, Mayor.
Go ahead, quick point of information.
Are we then taking a vote on the plan as amended?
Yeah, we will be.
I think that's just important just to reiterate for members.
Yeah, we'll be taking votes on any further amendments that are still valid, and then a final vote on the plan as amended. Okay, good afternoon. Can I be heard on the hybrid side of things?
You can, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Duff. All right, we'll proceed with the remainder of the amendments on headed item 10. Councillor O'Brodig's amendment will fall as it related to the parking provision. Councillor O'Toole's proposed amendment, that will fall because we've begun the process of modifying, so we don't have the option to postpone our decision and push it back to the ACM. We go to Amendment 5 then, which is in the name of Councillor William Carey, that the manager will conduct a review of the village scheme 6 months after its completion, including consultation with elected members, local businesses, health service providers and the wider community. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor Louise Dunn. Okay, Councillor Carey, if you'd like to move the amendment.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Yeah, it's fairly simple. I think you can all see by the wording. By calling for a review was actually that we get an opportunity to have a look and discuss any of the concerns that were being raised during the consultation. So that's essentially what it is. I don't think it's too controversial. I think for me it's a sensible route for us to take along the line. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments? Nope. We go to management for a response.
That's no problem at all, and we would do that as standard practice in any event. We would review schemes 6 months, 12 months in any event. So yeah, that's
okay. Yeah, Councillor Mahan. Mike.
It's a question related to the amendment. I presume where Councillor Carey is coming from, if the issues around parking prove to be insurmountable, the council would be open to rectifying them for a 6 month review.
Yeah, you can respond.
That's not what the motion asks for, actually. The amendment, or is it an amendment or a motion?
It's an amendment.
An amendment asks for, actually, it just has to review the scheme, which we would do, and we would always do user satisfaction surveys and so on, and learn from it, and see what happens at that point. But yeah, it wouldn't necessarily result in changes to the scheme.
Okay. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. Yeah, no, just a quick question about the age-friendly parking. You did say that would be up for review, all right? But how is that going to be monitored?
It's not relating to this particular amendment, so we'll
Thank you.
Rule it out of order. Sorry, Councillor McMahon. Okay, is the amendment agreed?
Agreed, Mayor.
Okay, so Amendment 5 is agreed. Amendment 6, in the name of Councillor O'Connell, that in addition to opening up the visual access to the village green, pedestrian access also be enhanced by provision of a pedestrian bridge between the main street and the village green. Can I get a seconder, please? Seconded by Councillor O'Toole. Okay, Councillor O'Connell, if you'd like to move your motion, please.
Good morning, good Mayor. Yes, I want to thank everybody for the earlier vote on that. And I look forward now to a really good project here. And so in that light or in that spirit, just very simply suggesting that we would have a little bridge from the main street into the area now that is going to be enhanced, the village green. And earlier on, quite a number of years ago, there was concerns about flooding, but that has been already dealt with in a report indicating that in fact there isn't any fear of flooding. So I'm proposing this. I think it's very simple, and I think it would certainly greatly enhance the whole concept behind making it a living centre.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Connell. Just before we go for contributions, I would like to ask on this one, if manager can possibly give me an estimation as to what the cost implications of that would be. Would it be a significant increase fiscally in what we are already committed to spend on the village green, Part 8? So if you can answer that, that'd be great. Councillor Johansson, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question in relation to this, and considering the previous amendment being passed, is this even feasible considering the lack of pedestrian space on the other side of the main street? If the car parking remains as it is today, I would think it would be very difficult to fit a bridge and have enough space for pedestrians to actually walk there and so on. So that's just my question. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Johansson. Councillor Gogarty, please.
Yeah, sorry, thanks, Mayor. I'm on my phone because I got cut off again for some reason. Just like to support this. Back in 2015, we had a proposal for works on the village green, which were then deferred because it was understood that there might be an issue with a pedestrian footbridge causing flooding issues. The council then came back to say, no, there will not be any flooding issues with a bridge. And I suppose the concerns expressed about a bridge at the time were making sure that kids weren't able to instantaneously leave the green area and go out to the wider space. As per the amendments been passed, which are looking for safe crossing areas, I think it's entirely reasonable that wherever a bridge lands, you have a pedestrian crossing. We're going to have a lot of traffic still coming through the village, one way or the other, as I said in my contribution, and that needs to be slowed down to allow people to cross. So talking about the shops, for example, you still have the opportunity to go to the shops, grab a coffee, and cross over to the village green using the bridge. And similarly, there needs to be a safer pedestrian access from the likes of the coffee works on the far side, all of which are within the remit of the current scheme. So if there's some money left now because the parking element isn't being proceeded with, I think putting the bridge in would be an asset, and it would link up the shop with the green area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gogarty. Councillor O'Brodick, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Given now that the focus is primarily on the village green area, similar questions, I would support this amendment by Councillor O'Connell. I think it's a good idea. I know there was concerns about it initially when it was floated about the cost of such a proposal, but I do think it will be a nice idea. In the same vein as Councillor Johansson, I'd be interested in the manager's response with regards to how practical it is now, and how feasible it is to be delivered from the Main Street side. So that's it, but support the amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor O'Brodick. Councillor Bailey, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, similarly, I definitely would have, I feel very optimistic about this being something that could be of great benefit to the village. However, I'd need to see a lot more information around this before I'd be in a position to be able to actually vote on something. So it would be great if Mick or Danny could confirm whether or not this is something that is feasible under the existing Part 8, or would a second Part 8 be required for something as, I imagine, quite a substantial piece of infrastructure going into the village. I think, from not just a cost perspective, but even just in terms of what that might look like, how that might work, how that might impact on businesses and others, and how much work could be involved, that kind of thing. It's a significant piece of infrastructure that I think we need a bit more detail on before I'd be in a position to vote. Totally in favour of the principle of it, but I think we need more detail. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. Councillor O'Toole, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and just speak in support of motion seconding there. Again, just to touch on had we brought this to our committee, we could have had the debates around these amendments and ideas and suggestions and brought everything together collectively to the full council, but here we are here now doing it at this present moment. Yes, the bridge was proposed back in 2015 at the time. It was a good idea by a fellow councillor, not here with us anymore, Councillor Lavelle. It was part because of flood issues, because we weren't that long after the major floods back in Lucan at the time, so it was put aside for that reason. It was brought back in, I believe, at an earlier stage of our presentations. We had options A, B and C, and we came up with an agreement to put out the one that we did in the end as a draft. And there was a significant amount mentioned at the time. I don't know what that would be now. And I suppose I'm glad to discuss it here now. The offset of not modifying what our planned pedestrian walls were in Lucan Village outside the perimeter of the village green, could those costs be contributed to such a proposal here? It was in the original plan, an original draft plan, so it has been accounted in cost 14 that was asked previously. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carey.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I just trying to find out and realise where we're talking about with the bridge, and like Councillor Bailey, I think I'd need a lot more detail I'm going to be guided by my colleague there, Councillor Brody, who's indicating he wishes to support the motion. But I'd like to see some information about exactly what we're talking about here, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carey. Councillor Casserly, please.
Thanks, Mayor. I remember this actually was about July 2015 when this was first brought to us. Tom was only a newborn actually when we were looking at that in the library. But just in terms, it was pulled originally because of flood risk and the flood alleviation wall. The village has, I suppose, suffered flooding before around Courtney's and Kenny's. So I was just wondering if the manager could update me on, I suppose, what happens in terms of flood alleviation in the village if this bridge was to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Casserly. Councillor O'Brien, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Just three quick things. One, it's my recollection that the flood alleviation issue wasn't the only reason that this bridge wasn't run with previously. So if the manager can recall the reasons why we didn't go ahead with that scheme, I'd appreciate it. Secondly, without trying to go back over old ground, it's a little bit Irish that here we are, we're talking about making the village a little bit safer for pedestrians and putting all sorts of measures in to allow people across the road where, you know, had we gone ahead with the plan as originally was, whether you liked it or you didn't like it, I think everybody accepted that it was going to reduce the number of cars in the village for good reasons or bad. And lastly, just on the point, and I only make this because it's been raised a couple of times, the issue of the area committee discussing this matter. We as councillors are all members of the public as well. You know, it was open to any councillor to make a submission and include items like this in their submission on the Part 8. So I think it's a bit of a red herring, kind of throwing out the idea that this should have been brought back to the area committee for discussion. I don't think it would have gotten us anywhere. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Tuffy, please.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I oppose this. It's not proper planning. It's purely because one local lobby group, which we met as myself and Councillor Toole and Councillor Gogarty and Councillor Connell met last week, and there was basically 3 people in the room apart from us. And, you know, they asked for it at that meeting, and therefore it's on the agenda here. It's just like tack on something because some local group looked for it. That is not proper planning, and it's not the way we should be approaching this. And just as regards Councillor O'Brien, it's my recollection that this didn't go ahead because the traders were against it. So, like, we don't do one part, which is key because the traders are against it, and then we tack on something else that has no relationship to the plan because, you know, some other lobby group looks for it. You know, it's just not right. We have to look at these things holistically, and I'm going to oppose this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tuffy. Councillor Cairns, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to agree with Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Tuffy there, we're talking about putting in a bridge, spending money on a bridge. Out of if we have any money left because we aren't actually taking out the the cars out of the village, it just seems a little bit bizarre when it could have been accommodated by just looking at the plan holistically and for everybody, not just for a few people. And I just think it's a bit crazy to look for money to put in a bridge because you won't accommodate a really good plan. Just had to comment on that.
Thank you, Councillor Cairns. Councillor Lawler, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to agree with some of Councillor Johansson and Councillor Tuffy on this one. This wasn't part of any submission, and Mick Mulhern and Michael would have put that in if that was needed. So, just to come this late stage for a bridge so late, this is complete change of this proposal, this original proposal. The costs are going to go through the roof then, and then, a decision could be made. We had a vote on the previous amendment, got it 2015. This is making huge change. We got a win. Everybody wasn't happy with it. We brought it 2015, it was a win. But now we're just adding on more costs, which is crazy. What wasn't in the original plans. So I would urge members, please don't support this pedestrian bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lawler. That concludes the debate. We've got a management for a response.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Yeah, I think as Councillor Lawler said, that this issue wasn't raised during the course of the public consultation, so it's not been responded to in our report. This was part of a previous Part 8 proposal back in 2015, which was undeliverable because of the flooding issues that it would generate. That proposal sought to remove part of the flood wall, and that's not acceptable. This proposal, it's the proposal to introduce a bridge. It was looked at as part of the very early options here, taking account of the flooding issue and the type of intervention that you'd need, the type of bridge that would be needed would have to raise up quite high above the flood wall. On the main street, it would have to land and with steps down into where the footpath is. You'd be removing trees, you'd be removing car parking, you'd have to then address a connection across the road, removing car parking on the other side. Within the village green itself, it would require a significant redesign of the scheme that we have in front of us today. My view, and also at that time when we were looking at this as an option, we felt that the cost, which would be substantial, could be dealt with in a better way, and that was by opening up the southern side of the green onto Lucan Road, where we've reorientated the historic wall there, opened that space up so that it's made to be much more accessible. So this was looked at as an option. It was ruled out because of the impact on the main street, the impact on the green, the cost, and the value for money benefits of it were considered to be minimal. I would also say that given the scale of redesign that would be required as part of this proposal, we would be of the view that this would be a material amendment to the Part 8 proposal, and you'd effectively have to start that planning process again.
Okay. I need to just double check something. Give me 2 minutes. Thank you. Okay, based on management's response, the fact that this, and there is consensus in management that this would be a material amendment, or a material alteration, rather, to the Part 8, rather than a modification which is provided for in the statutory process, I'm afraid I'll have to rule the amendment out of order. Can't proceed.
No, I accept that, Mayor. I accept what the manager is saying. However, I would just like to point out the three people we met, I wouldn't call them, a small group, to the Lucan Planning Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Connell. Thanks for your acceptance of that. That brings us to the end. As that 7 falls because we've begun the process, that's it. We'll move directly to a vote on the Part 8 proposal as modified. So, roll call vote on the Part 8 amendment as modified. Part 8 proposal as modified, apologies. So, sorry? With the amendment included, yeah. So cameras on, please. Roll call vote on the Part 8 proposal as modified by the amendments accepted earlier. Councillor Carey, point of information. Microphone.
Just a quick question, if we could ask the manager, if he could give us any indication of how he thinks the current proposal has been affected by the previous amendment.
He's already indicated in a response earlier on that the indication is to proceed with the Village Green plans. So that's been asked and answered.
It's fine. Sorry.
Councillor McMahon, point of information.
No, can I ask my question now, or like at what stage? What stage are we allowed to debate the Part 8?
Earlier.
I thought we were debating the amendments since the start.
Go ahead. Make a point on the amendment, please. Or on the.
Just on a quick question on the age-friendly parking. How do you intend to monitor that? I know it's a pilot scheme, and I'd be very interested for other villages around the place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. If anyone has not contributed on an amendment to date and would like to make a contribution on the Part 8, now's their opportunity. No, and you have been very patient, Councillor McMahon. You did wait to ask a question. My apologies for skipping over you. We'll go to Mick to answer that one.
Well, as the amendment has been agreed, there is no age-friendly parking proposed, so there's no proposals to the main street now included within the scheme, so there's no age-friendly parking proposed. So, I suppose, not to be flippant about it, but we won't be monitoring it,
I'm going to move to clarify, just to say that that's no longer a matter for this Part 8, quite simply. It's not to say that there won't be any age-friendly parking in Lucan. It's a debate we have in another forum. It's not happening with this. Okay, just to clarify that. Are you happy enough with that? Okay. Are we happy enough then? We'll move on. We'll take a roll call vote then on the Part 8 proposal as amended.
Councillor Bailey?
Reluctantly agree.
Councillor Carey?
Agree.
Councillor Casserly?
In favour?
Councillor Collins? Councillor Costello?
In favour.
Councillor Donaghy?
In favour.
Councillor Duff?
In favour.
Councillor Dunn?
In favour.
Councillor Edge?
In favour.
Councillor Egan? Councillor Gilligan?
For.
Councillor Gogarty?
In favour.
Councillor Hayes?
For.
Councillor Holohan? Councillor Johansson?
In favour.
Councillor Kavanagh?
In favour.
Councillor Kearns?
In favour. Could have been much better though.
Councillor King, apologies. Councillor Lawler?
In favour.
Councillor Mahon? Councillor McCrave?
In favour.
Councillor McMahon?
In favour.
Councillor McManus?
In favour.
Councillor Moynihan?
In favour.
Councillor Murphy?
In favour.
Councillor O'Brady?
In favour.
Councillor O'Brien?
In favour.
Councillor O'Brien? Councillor O'Connell?
For.
Councillor O'Connor?
For.
Councillor Donovan?
For.
Councillor O'Hara?
In favour.
Councillor O'Toole?
In favour.
Councillor Perry-Padden?
In favour.
Councillor Richardson? Councillor Sinclair?
Gwynna.
Councillor Timmins?
Or.
Councillor Tuffy?
For.
Councillor Whelan?
In favour.
Thank you.
Okay, I got ahead of myself. I'm going to propose that. Can I get a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Casserly. That's correct. Evolver Bertus Trucca, Iguina Dinavon, in favour 32, against 1. The